The game I played for rank 8 was Touhou 6, Embodiment of Scarlet Devil on normal mode. Back in rank 4 we talked about what Touhou is.
It's like if Despacito was only ever played on Puerto Rican radio stations.
And today I want to talk about something I learned while playing it. Remember back in the Core Yoon video where I said,
I think Core Yoon is actually a hard game that is just extremely forgiving. It would be a very difficult game to try to clear without dying, but it lets you die a lot.
Touhou 6 and all the other Touhou games that I've tried so far are like that. If you were to try and beat this game on pure dodging skill alone, a feat that some players call a no miss, no bomb, it would be way harder, obviously. But you don't have to do that. For regular players just going for a 1cc, Touhou is just as much a strategy game as it is a game about pattern recognition and reflexes. So let's talk strategy. First, we need to define our goal. We want to play through all 6 stages of Embodiment of Scarlet Devil on normal difficulty without using a continue. We fail if our hitbox touches the hitbox of any enemy or projectile and we don't have any extra lives left. Okay, so getting to the end without getting hit isn't much of a strategy. The strategy comes in when we realize that if we get hit and we do have an extra life, we don't lose any progress. We respawn immediately with a small window of invulnerability and can continue playing. That means that for every life that we have, we can afford to get hit by an attack instead of dodging it. On default settings, we start with 3 lives in Touhou 6, or 2 extra lives and 1 non-extra life. Let's consider any time that we could have avoided using a resource by playing perfectly a mistake. So to start, we know that we can make at least 2 mistakes and still beat the game. In addition to our starting lives, there are 2 1-up items we can collect throughout the game for extra lives. We'll also earn an extra life when we reach 10, 20, 40, and 60 million points. High-scoring performance in one part of the game can earn us extra resources to allow us to make more mistakes in a harder part of the game. Even if you only care about surviving the 1cc, it still makes sense to put some effort into scoring because it will actually make survival easier, even if it requires doing some riskier actions earlier on. In Touhou 6, you'll probably get 40 million points without trying, just by making it to the end of the game. But to get the last 20 million points or so for that extra life or extend, you'll need to go out of your way to squeeze some more points out throughout your run. You can see in my run that I hit 60 million points just before going into the final boss fight. You'll also notice that if I hadn't had the final extra life, I wouldn't have 1cc'd the game. Let's tally all of that up so far. We start with 2 extra lives, we can get 4 more lives by scoring points, and if we defeat the mid-bosses without letting them time out in stages 3 and 5, we'll earn 1-ups for 2 more extra lives. That makes 8 times that we can make a mistake and still get the 1cc. But the reality is that an extra life doesn't just give us 1 more mistake. Every life comes with 3 bombs. Depending on your character, your bombs will behave a little differently, but in all cases they should allow us to avoid getting hit, and most of them will also do some damage to the boss we're fighting too. Even the shortest bombs in the game provide a longer period of invulnerability than you get when you die, so bombs are actually a more useful resource for covering imperfections than extra lives are. Realizing this leads us to an all-important strategic tenet. Do not use a life when you could use a bomb instead. This is easier said than done, but drilling that into our heads will give us a much higher chance of success. In addition to all the extra bombs that we'll get for our extra lives, there are at least 2 bomb items that we can collect. There may actually be more than that, but I couldn't find a quick answer online. So let's take another look at all of the resources that we have at our disposal. 2 starting extra lives, 4 point-based extra lives, 2 item-based extra lives, 3 bombs per life, making 27, including the bombs from our starting life, and 2 item-based extra bombs. In total, 40. You can make 40 mistakes and still 1cc Touhou 6. And actually, if you're not too proud to do it, you could also increase your starting lives in the options menu up to 7, giving you an extra 16 free mistakes. Just keep in mind that you can only have 8 total lives at any given time, so you may waste an extra life if you earn it while already at your maximum. The next thing we need to do is actually play the game. Through practice, we can start identifying which areas of the game we might want to spend resources on to bypass. While doing this, here's something to keep in mind. The earlier the mistake, the less time is lost in starting over. So if you die in a section you didn't want to use any resources on in stage 1, you can just restart the game and you've only lost a couple of minutes of time. If you make a similar mistake on stage 6 that leaves you without the resources you need, you'll have to spend another 20 plus minutes getting back to where you were. Because of this, I would recommend relying more heavily on practice for the earlier parts of the game and using resources more liberally on the later parts of the game. For Touhou 6, I would recommend that when you're doing your full runs, don't plan on using any bombs until the Stage 2 final boss at the very earliest, and go ahead and reset if you die before Stage 3. Let's assume maximum scuffiness here and say we will use 2 bombs on the Stage 2 final boss. So here's our new operating strategy. Play Stage 1 without making any mistakes, use 2 bombs to survive the most difficult attacks during the Stage 2 final boss, and use our remaining 38 potential resources to survive the remaining 4 stages. Getting through 4 stages with 38 mistakes allowed sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Well, relatively speaking, in the world of shmups, it is. My total playtime in Touhou 6 when I 1cc'd it was about 15 hours. But still consider that the 1cc takes around 26 minutes. So for every minute of successful play in my final run, it took over a half an hour of practice. This is the thing about shmup difficulty. You can realistically 1cc a lot of shmups in a comparable amount of time that it would take to finish a standard AAA game. I'll be maybe a little bit bold and say you can 1cc almost any shmup in less time than it takes to beat Red Dead Redemption 2 or Persona 5, for example. The difference is that in shmups, practice, not progress, is the majority of the gameplay. If you can enjoy the practice of learning a bullet hell, like you can enjoy the progress of playing through a linear story or campaign in another game, you can probably 1cc the first loop of any shmup that you want to. Obviously, there's way more to the strategy of playing Touhou 6, but that's all that I wanted to touch on. For me, realizing just how imperfectly I could play and still succeed really helped demystify this game, which, by the way, felt impossible when I first started playing it, like almost every game I've 1cc did. You do need to learn a lot about dodging and pattern recognition to beat Touhou, and you also need to memorize a lot of attacks and enemy positions, but you don't need to be perfect. Here's the end of my 1cc. I made 39 mistakes in this run. You know what I call that? Good enough.